it's almost like they're turning over a new leaf. The Chargers' dark cloud is starting to evaporate a little bit. I wasn't sold on them because they had 5 wins against teams with 7+ losses coming into the week. And off of that alone, I know the Bengals are the Bengals, and they have found ways to lose all year. But that was an impressive victory nonetheless.
It was. And, I'm a huge fan of Justin Herbert. We talked to Mike Tannenbaum. We talked to Fat Jack, and they nonetheless kind of said, Herbert's statistics aren't there, but he's certainly winning football games, and that's all that matters. Herbert has thrown for 4,000 passing yards multiple times in his career.
And had nothing to show for it.
And now, his statistics are down, and they're 7-3. So I think he's a winning quarterback, and I also think there's something to be said about J.K. Dobbins in that running game. Colin, going into this season, I go, wait a minute here. No more Eckler. They don't really have a running back that's able to stay healthy. They have J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. Jim Harbaugh flipped with his brother John Harbaugh for his running back room. But I'll tell you what, J.K. Dobbins has been, in my opinion, one of the most improved players in the NFL this year.
He's also been healthy.
And Colin, he has a great offensive line. He's doing it behind. The Chargers did exactly the opposite of what the Bears did. The Bears added a bunch of weapons and a flashy quarterback. And I understand, Colin, they needed a quarterback. I'm not saying they shouldn't have taken Williams or anything. But instead of going wide receiver, like an Odunze, or trading up for one of the prized wide receivers, they went with an offensive lineman, and they reshuffled that offensive line, and it's paying dividends. And now Jim Harbaugh looks like a genius at 7-3 and being 4-1 at home. And how about Ladd McConkey? I'll be the first to say it. I didn't believe in Ladd McConkey. I go, how is this guy going to play wide receiver in the NFL? He's undersized. Said similar stuff about his other Georgia counterpart, Brock Bowers. That's neither here nor there. Colin, I've been very impressed with this team, and even defensively as well. They've come a long way, and I think it's a lot to do with the head coach and the change of the culture.
Yeah, it's a good point you brought up about the Bears and how they kind of did the flipped way. If you look at the Charger or look at the Bears from that perspective, they sort of put Lamborghini rims on a Jeep Cherokee 2006 that doesn't even start. And while on the flip side of things, the Chargers took their Toyota Camry and they started to bring it up from the inside instead of decking it out with the jewelry. And they got away from the flash of the receivers and the running backs and sort of the premier paid positions, the fantasy football players, if you will. And they built up inside out. They established the defensive line, the linebackers. They established that offensive line, and they could run the ball.
They fixed the engine. That's exactly what they did.
Fixed the tires versus the engine.
Yep. And I don't want to say it is a surprise. I was about to say, Kyle, it's not a surprise to me, but I think it's a surprise to a lot of us. And can you imagine if the Kansas City Chiefs weren't in their division? They'd have a home playoff game the way they're playing. Now, we still got a lot of football to play. But if they didn't have the Kansas City Chiefs, arguably the best team in the NFL, I know that they lost to the Bills. If they didn't have the Chiefs in there, they could have a home playoff game. There's something to be said about that.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. They're in a position now where they've had a fairly light schedule so far and an easy schedule. They've taken advantage in all the right ways. And finally, yesterday, instead of winning ugly 18-10, winning 15-9, something that makes you want to pull your hair out watching. Instead, they sort of shifted here, and they took advantage of a very lackluster pass defense that the Bengals have, and instead of playing into their style of play, they looked to expose the Bengals, and They played and they game planned in order to expose the Bengals pass defense. And that's not something I was necessarily convinced that the Chargers do. I feel like the Chargers just always played their brand of football, whoever they were playing, and it didn't really matter, and they were going to do what they do, and either they win or lose at the end of the day. Instead, you actually saw something that the great teams in the NFL do, and they worked tirelessly to exploit the things that the Bengals don't do well. Mm-hmm. They work tirelessly to exploit that pass defense with Herbert using his strong arm that he rarely uses down the field. Herbert with his legs. Of course, they couldn't keep up with him in terms of any QB spy. With his legs, he was killing them. And then defensively, they made sure to, bottle up as best they can and keep those receivers in front of them, double up Jamar Chase, get him frustrated. Allow T. Higgins to have these one-on-one opportunities, but it's not going to kill you. It's a bend, don't break type of game with the amount of offensive pieces they have. I give the Chargers a lot of credit. They showed me a whole lot, despite I know the Bengals are sitting there at 4-6. It's not necessarily a top-tier team, but everybody knows that that team can beat you on any given day because of that prolific offense and how well Burrow is playing.
Right.
I think it's just Bengals are another example. They want to gloss up the rims, get fresh new tires, but they don't realize the engine of the car doesn't even start. How are you supposed to drive the car with your brand new tires and your tinted windows when you don't even have a proper engine? It needs a new transmission. The brakes don't work. There's a whole bunch of actual inner issues within the Bengals, the Bears. Some of these teams that, alleviate a ton of resources into the wrong spots, when in reality, it's the pieces of the engine that really make the car run.
And Colin, the engine I'm thinking of is offensive line and defensive line. I could argue the Bengals kind of have said, who cares about the offensive line since they drafted Joe Burrow. I could kind of say the Bengals as an organization they've always focused on the flashy players and the offensive players. That's a take as old as time, is that the Bengals draft offense and the Steelers draft defense within that division. So I'm not shocked that the Bengals are having the year that they are, because if you rewind a couple of months back to when Jamar Chase was frustrated, rewind a couple of months back to when T. Higgins was frustrated. I believe Higgins is on like a 1-year prove-it contract.
Yeah, he's probably going to be out.
So, and it's Jamar Chase trying to force himself out after, I don't want to say acting a fool. Acting the fool is the wrong word to say, but
it's a lot more of the same with him.
Lashing out, right? Lashing out in the locker room, saying, "Oh, you got to ask Coach Taylor those questions." I did this and that. It's a mess in Cincy, and the problem is they're wasting Joe Burrow time, right? They're wasting a prime year in Joe Burrow's career, where the last couple of games it's been 300 yards and 3+ touchdowns.
And he's played very, very well.
He's played unreal.
He was great in the pocket yesterday. His pocket awareness, his pocket presence, movement within the pocket, utilizing his legs. He was locked in, and there was no doubt about it. You could see it even when he was on the bench. Guy wasn't talking to anybody. He was zoned into that game. It goes to show that the proof is in the pudding. Doesn't matter how good your skill positions are, how good and Chase Brown's a good running back. They have pieces all over that offense on the outsides. But if it's not working defensively or on the inside of things, it's all going to blow up. It doesn't matter how pretty, the windows and the tires are. If the engine doesn't run, the car's not going to go anywhere.
As a younger football fan, I always would, why are they drafting offensive linemen, Dad? Oh, why didn't we get, this receiver? I loved watching.
People said that about the Lions with Penei Sewell. Why, is he the right move here? Absolutely.
Right. And the one, Colin, in 2006, I was 12 years old and couldn't believe that the Browns drafted Joe Thomas over a couple of the skill players. Turns out Joe Thomas, a Hall of Famer, one of the best Cleveland Browns of all time. So, I'm always a fan of if your team has your franchise quarterback, has things figured out at the quarterback position, I'd be completely okay with taking a lineman first round every single year. Now, obviously, you need other pieces in your football team. We could sit here and talk about positional needs like defensive end, lockdown corner, and whatever. But I am always fine with my team taking extra hogs. And it's a physical position, Colin. They get hurt. You're going to need to be deep at that position.
Yeah. That's Mike Rizzo, Colin Russo here, Christian Cap behind the glass, Russo and Rizzo on ESPN 106.3, live from downtown West Palm Beach at the City Place Studios. A statement win for the Chargers a little bit. Trying to get rid of that, bad luck, dark cloud. And you saw it a little bit yesterday. A meltdown averted, essentially, when they were up 24-6, something like that, 27-6. And they basically tried everything in their power to blow that game to the Bengals. I thought the Bengals were going to win that game as well, with a chance to go a go-ahead touchdown. And Burrow missed Chase on a streaking route when he hit, I'm going to butcher this guy's name, the Iosivas. They hit him over the middle. Yoshivas. Right when you looked at that, I knew it was Yoshivas.
I am bad with names too, Colin, so don't worry about it.
And he missed Chase streaming down the field. It would have been a go-ahead touchdown. So that was a crucial play there. But if there's something for Jamar Chase to complain about, it's that. It's not necessarily the play call. You scored enough points in the second half against a very, very good defense. But a statement win for the Chargers nonetheless, 34-27. Herbert, of course, nearly 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, and was capable with his legs, over 60 yards rushing.